Before I do start this video, make sure to use my TCG player affiliate down below if you're looking for any of these singles that I talk about today. Also, this channel is sponsored by Arcane Fortress. If you're looking for the best deck boxes around, make sure to use my link down below in the description to check them out. One other way you can support the channel is by becoming a patron. There are some great benefits of being a patron to the channel, such as giveaways, deck advice, and more when you do join. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on PubStomp MTG, and in this video today, I'm going to discuss with you Gev's Scaled Scorch, and just based off the art alone, I love this. I love reptiles and I love amphibians, and so seeing lizards and also frogs get a basic support in this set is really neat to see. And so this is basically giving me a de facto lizard commander, unless there's some other lizard commander that I don't know about. So let's read what it does. So for a black and a red, it's a 2-mana commander with a 3/2 body. That actually is pretty good stats alone. It does have ward, pay 2 life, and it has other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn. So basically, with 3 opponents on the battlefield, if all of them lost life, your creatures are going to enter the battlefield with 3/1/1 counters on them. And whenever you cast a lizard spell, Gev's Scaled Scorch deals 1 damage to target opponent. So basically, this is just burning your opponents by playing a bunch of lizard spells. I absolutely love it. I love just the art alone, how he's just smirking around with his 2 little lizard blades. And it looks like in the background, frogs are chasing after him. I don't know what's going on in the storyline, but this is a very adorable lizard, and I feel like it's going to be a very powerful one as well. Also, it's a lizard mercenary, which is a very specific typing, especially with mercenary. You'll notice later on when I comment on the video. But this can be pretty powerful. It buffs up your creatures. It also will deal a lot of damage to your opponents depending on how much lizards you do play. And it can protect itself. It does have ward, pay 2 life. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a couple different things. I'm first going to focus on lizards because of that last ability will deal damage when we cast lizard spells. I will then focus on burn and then focus on win cons of the deck. And so without further ado, let's get it started. Let's talk about Gev's Scaled Scorch. So let's first talk about lizards. There's a lot of lizards outside of just this set alone. So let's first focus on one that synergizes with our commander a lot, and that's Kedis Emberclaw Familiar. This one's pretty simple, but very effective with our commander. Whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. This is easily one of the more synergistic lizards we get out into the deck, because of course when we swing with our commander, we hit one opponent, but we're going to hit 2 other opponents off of that as well, and then we can have a creature enter the battlefield with 3/1/1 counters on it. Another fun lizard to bring your attention to is Lizard Blades, mainly because it's a lizard equipment. It does have double strike itself, and equipped creature does have double strike, so if we equip this to our commander, it can swing for a decent amount, because a 3 power with double strike will be 6 damage, so honestly, it could get us to commander lethal damage in no time. Let's focus on some lizards that will deal some damage for us, like Spitfire Lagak and Magebane Lizard. If we have Spitfire Lagak on the battlefield and we just play a land with our commander on the battlefield, all lizards entering the battlefield will get 3/1/1 counters on it because it'll deal 1 damage to each opponent. That's what we want to achieve in this deck, just to buff up all our lizards on the battlefield. And I do think Magebane Lizard can be a great effect in our deck. It can punish us though for casting non-creature spells, but that's a little downside because of course we're not really going into a storm deck. A lot of other people may, and then we could just punish them for that. But I did want to bring in some cards from Modern Horizons 3 because Modern Horizons 3 was a powerhouse. Let's focus on Party Thrasher and Overclocked Electromancer. Party Thrasher is essentially a great engine for our deck. It does have that ability, non-creature spells you cast from exile have Convoke, and at the beginning of pre-combat main phase you may discard a card. If you do exile the top 2 cards of your library, then choose one of them. You may play that card this turn. Of course, you probably don't want to have this on the battlefield with Magebane Lizard because it's going to deal damage to you when you cast non-creature spells. Besides that point, Overclocked Electromancer is pretty good. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 3 energy counters. If you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on Overclocked Electromancer. Also, whenever it does attack, double its power until end of turn. And when it deals combat damage to a creature, if that creature was dealt excess damage this turn, you get X energy, where X is the excess damage. So if this enters the battlefield with 3/1/1 counters because of our commander, it'll be a 5/5 on the battlefield, and when it does attack, it'll deal 10 damage unless somebody blocks it. Then we get that much energy depending on how much damage we get excess on. Then after that, we'll get a lot of energy so that we can put more 1/1 counters on Overclocked Electromancer and get a snowball effect, making it more and more powerful. well. But let's move on to one card that absolutely synergizes with our commander, and that's Laughing Jasper Flint. This is a great engine for us because, of course, creatures you control but don't own are mercenaries in addition to their other types. And at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of target opponent's library, where X is the number of outlaws you control. So if you notice your commander is an outlaw, until end of turn you may cast the spells among those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. So because your commander is an outlaw and a lot of lizards in this set are outlaws, you're going to trigger this so much so that you can get a lot of card advantage from your opponent. Plus this can enter the battlefield as a 7/6 depending on how much damage you dealt to each opponent. So this is easily a great include in the deck, no question about it. I will say lizards are not as big of a supported type, so I did want to throw in Roaming Throne. This is probably an easy include in any of those creature type decks. You choose a creature type, so lizards, and then you're going to double the triggered abilities of all your lizards you control. So this is going to be an absolute staple. Of course, it's a staple in any of those creature type decks, but of course had to throw it in there. This is going to be a staple for any of those decks that have this option too, so this is probably not the last time you're going to hear from Roaming Throne. But I did want to shift my focus to specifically Bloomburrow lizards. There's a lot of them that are going to synergize so much with our commander. The first one I did want to highlight is an adorable one with Kinderspark Duo. This is a lizard otter. It does have an ability to deal 1 damage to a target opponent by tapping it, and you can untap this as long as you cast another non-creature spell, so you could go back and forth tapping it to deal 1 damage to an opponent, cast a lizard spell to deal damage to another opponent, and try to get another way to deal a damage to an opponent so that you can get 3 damages across, so that you can get 3/1 counters on lizards that you cast. Another card that's very similar to this one but has a landfall trigger is an amazing one with Iridescent Vine Slasher. For 1 black mana, it does have Offspring too, where you can essentially make a token copy of it by paying 2 mana. Like Spitfire Legak, this does have a landfall trigger. Whenever a land you control enters the battlefield, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. So this is very different from Spitfire, where it does the damage to each opponent. This only does 1 damage to 1 opponent, but if you do have that Offspring mode, you can just essentially make another damage so that you can get more counters on your lizards. Also, the fact that you could just make 2 bodies off of this by having that Offspring cost is incredible. Let's move on to another lizard that I think will help push the gameplay, and that's Hired Claw. For 1 red mana, whenever you attack with 1 or more lizards, Hired Claw deals 1 damage to target opponent. Also does have an activated ability by paying 1 and a red, put a 1/1 counter on Hired Claw, activate only if an opponent lost life this turn and only once each turn. So little by little this will get bigger and bigger. That's something kind of funny about all these lizards. They're very low CMC, so that way you can cast multiple at a time, triggering your commander to deal 1 damage. This is just another great option, just so that you could just amplify the damage just a little bit more. If you really want to amplify that damage, Valley Flamecaller is an excellent choice for 2 and a red. If a lizard you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage +1 instead. Of course, it does have those other creature types, but we're really focusing on lizards. So all those little 1/1 damages that you've been dealing here and there are going to be 2 damage instead. So this is going to be an excellent choice just to amplify the damage to your opponents. So instead of getting 1 damage, 2 damage is going to be dealt instead. But the last 2 lizards I did want to highlight are good card advantage engines like Flame Cache Gecko and Fireglass Mentor. I love the Flame Cache Gecko because I had a gecko a long time ago when I was a kid, and so seeing this in art is really cool. It does enter the battlefield if an opponent lost life this turn. You add black and a red. That's perfect because of course we want to storm off with a lot of lizards entering the battlefield. This way we could just get the extra mana to pay for another lizard. Also, you can discard a card and draw a card by that activated ability, so this is just a great way to kind of churn through our deck, finding more and more lizards. Plus, Fireglass Mentor is a pretty good option for us to kind of get some kind of card advantage at the beginning of your second main phase. If an opponent lost life this turn, exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them. Until end of turn you may play that card. So this is just another one that just synergizes with our game plan, so that way we could just find more cards in our deck to just play later on. But now let's shift into the last subject. Let's focus on win cons of the deck. There's a lot of good ones that you could absolutely take advantage of. The first one I did want to focus on, it does actually gain us some life with Valley Rockcaller. So this is a squirrel, so technically it's not a lizard by any means, but it does synergize with our lizards. Whenever it does attack, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of other squirrels, bats, lizards, and rats you control. So if you do have a lot of lizards on the battlefield, we could gain a lot of life and our opponents will each lose a lot of life. And of course this does synergize with our commander too, so that's why I did want to highlight this one specifically. Another excellent win con of the deck would be Torbrand, Thane of Redfell, mainly because with a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent, or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. So instead of a measly 1 damage being dealt to each of your opponents, each time you either cast a lizard spell or deal 1 damage to one of your opponents, they're going to be dealt 3 damage, which is quite insane because it could really stack up easily. But honestly, why stop there when we have Oher Ashanil Deepest Might? This is just a crazier version of Torbrand. It can scale depending on if we put more 1/1 counters on it specifically. I mean, it's not technically a lizard, so it won't synergize with our commander, but there's various means that we can put 1/1 counters on Oher Ashanil to basically amplify its damage power. So if Oher Ashanil's power is just 4 on the battlefield and we deal 1 non-combat damage, instead we're going to deal 4 non-combat damage, which could really scale with the game. Of course, if we put more 1/1 counters on Oher Ashanil, so let's just say for example it's a 10-10, instead of dealing 1 damage, we're going to deal 10 damage to an opponent. That's going to be quite cracked in this deck. Again, this commander is a pretty powerful burn commander that we could take advantage of different effects like Torbrand, Oher Ashanil. I don't necessarily think damage doublers are going to be very good in the deck specifically. I mean, they can, but you're only going to deal 2 damage instead of 1 damage if you're focusing on the 1 damage at a time thing. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on this very cute and adorable commander. I love lizards and my wife loves lizards, so I'm most likely going to be building Gev Scaled Scorch. But let me know down below in the comments, what are your thoughts and opinions about this commander? Do you plan on building it yourself? Let me know down below in the comments, what are other suggestions that you would put in this deck specifically? I would love to hear your thoughts down below. This could be a pretty powerful burn commander and one that could be a very good engine. Of course, it does have that lizard type and focuses on that specifically. In the right type of setup with lizards and a lot of burn enablers, this could be one extremely powerful commander. So with all that said, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. With that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.